Hi, Happy New Year. It's Ms. McKenzie, your K-12 district teacher librarian with this week's Makerspace activity. And for the whole month of January, we are actually going to be chipping away at a 3D paper sculpture technique design board. And let me do a quick screen share to just talk about a couple of things. All right, so you should be looking at my monthly newsletter. And I'm currently working on a Fulbright Teachers for Global Classrooms international project. And I'm working with 67 other educators from across the country, and we're growing globalized curriculum. Our curriculum is framed by the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So in 2015, leaders from across the globe got together and said, these 17 things every human on the face of this planet deserves. And they're trying to work together as an international team to make the world a better place. And those things are what I see as like basic human rights. So like no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water, etc. And number 9 of the goals is build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. You all know that innovation is one of my absolute favorite words. So anyway, moving forward, for the next school year, each month we're going to focus on one of those sustainable development goals and try to tuck in our virtual field trips and our makerspace activities so everything kind of blends together and we emphasize those goals. So with that being said, I better make a point of reminding everyone that all of our virtual field trips this month are about innovation, and we're taking tours of makerspaces. So this week's tour is of the Spark Lab in Eugene, and it's sponsored by Connected Lane, which provides services and resources for all students in Lane County. It's super rad and fabulous. We'll look at the Talent City Makerspace and the Florence Makerspace next week. I'll take you on a tour of all the Makerspace stations we have popping up across our district libraries. And then the final trip of the month, we're going to do one micro virtual field trip every month where I'm collecting samples and specimens from every place that we visit. And then we'll look at them at the end of the month under the microscope. So here is a picture of what, by the end of the month, what our paper sculpture technique board will look like. And this week, we're just going to set up our board, talk about the why that we just went over, and work on this first row. So we're going to create a roll, a loop, a curl, and a tab. And these are basic structural designs that we can create out of paper. And as we create each little structure, we'll talk about like where do we see this kind of structure in real life, built out of other materials possibly, or how could we use this paper structure design to, let's pretend we're building a paper house. How could we use these little design elements to make a fabulous paper house? All right, so let's get after it. Let me go ahead and pull up my document camera. I was just in a class and got that first board done with some 4th graders. So this is what we're doing today. You're going to add your title, put your name on your paper. We're going to create a roll, a loop, a curl, and some tabs. And one thing I do not have is my paper label. Let's see if this silver marker shows up. Let's see. What did I say I have? I have a roll, a loop, a curl, and a tab. Okay, so let's make those 4 structures. My favorite of the 4 was creating and making the tabs. I'm like, I have never done a tab before. And I can think of lots of ways that would be super useful. Okay, so here's a fresh sheet of paper. I'm actually going to fold it in half just for the sake of this demo. Everyone needs a scissors and a glue stick like usual. Scissors. You don't have to put this heading on the top of your paper, but you have the option to do it. So you can go ahead and put that up top. And so, yeah, this week we're just talking about the why, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, innovation, etc. And then the next couple of weeks, you'll add your row, and then we'll do a little design challenge, okay? So we said the very first thing we're making is a roll. And I feel like everyone knows how to roll up a piece of paper, right? You can roll it up. When I was just in a 4th grade class, we were talking about how some students chose to make small rolls. You can just make one big roll or make a couple of small rolls. And we were talking about why is it easier to roll up a small roll versus a wider roll? Or some students were like, it's easier to roll it up and make it stick this way versus this way. And we're like, well, why is that? And we're talking about surface tension of supplies and materials. So how fascinating is that? So you're going to roll up your piece of paper, put some glue on one end and roll it on top like that. And particularly for our younger friends, it is easier if you do cut that piece of paper in half to make a roll. You do have to leave, hold that roll together to allow the glue to dry for a couple of seconds. And you will have to hold it longer if you have a bigger roll. Okay. And once you feel that you've got it where it's dried enough to stick on its own, like that one just popped open. So I obviously need to hold that one more. Okay. Once it is dried enough to stick on its own, then you can take that roll and put it on your sample. All right. And if you have a white colored pencil or crayon, you can label it roll. All right. I think I'm going to put my 2 little rolls. Go right or wrong. Okay, there are my roll samples. All right. So the next thing that we are making is a loop. And a loop is simply going to be taking our piece of paper, not folding it, but putting one edge to the other and gluing it like that. So again, you could make one big loop for your sample. Just for funsies, if you wanted to make a couple of loops, you could do that. It's actually, again, I think a little easier to glue when we're working with a smaller sample. Okay, so there's one little loop. Again, you're just putting putting some glue down, pinching it in half, but leave that side open. And then we are holding it for just a second so that glue can dry. Okay. Oh, didn't hold that one long enough. It popped open. Okay. Pinch, pinch, pinch. So while I'm waiting for these to dry, in the last classroom, I was like, well, in engineering and design and infrastructure, where do we see things that look like rolls, or how could this be useful? And some students were like, well, that looks like pipes, like water pipes. Another student was like, if you were building a paper structure, your rolls could act as pillars to hold a roof. Okay, so the sky is the limit. There's no right or wrong. That one's not wanting to stay glued together. Let me start getting these 2 glued down. Put that one on later. Okay, so there's 1 tab glued down. And for fun, I'll do the other one the other way. Not tab, loop. Okay. So we have rolls. We now have 2 loops. Okay. The next fun little structure that we're going to add to our board is going to be a curl. And I think a curl is easiest to do if you have something to roll your paper around. And also, I think it is more fun and easier to do if you're working with a thinner piece of paper. So I'm going to again try to make 3 small chunks out of my 1 big chunk of paper. There is no right or wrong though. And I am going to use, let's just use this. And I'm going to roll my paper around my pen and slide my pen out. And there's kind of a curl. That one's a loose curl. And I'm just going to take and glue one side of it down. Okay, so there's a loose curl. Maybe I can kind of tighten it up a little bit by curling it by hand. Okay, curly cube. And then what if I tried curling around a thinner item? This is a little bit thinner, and I'm just going to try to go thinner and tighter to see how curly I can get this paper. Ooh. So there I am. There we go. Ooh, that one got curly cued. Okay. So again, engineering design process, we're creating, tinkering, and exploring. If you curl your paper around a thinner pen, you're going to get a tighter roll. Some of us already knew that, but it's fun to tinker and explore. All right. So I've got a loose curl and a tighter curl. I'm just going to leave it as is for right now and label it curl. No right or wrong. And then the last one, this was kind of my favorite because for whatever reason, I've never cut tabs and constructed with tabs before. I'm going to make my piece of paper a little bit shorter. You don't have to. And for the tabs, we're cutting tabs out of a piece of paper that are going to allow us to create a curved structure. And when I was talking to students, I was like, where do you see curved supplies in construction, or what could this possibly be good for? One of the students said, they're like, well, I helped my dad put landscaping around a house this past summer, and they put a plastic curved products at the edge of the beds so that the mulch wouldn't come out of the beds or the rocks wouldn't come out of the beds. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what this reminds me of. All right, so to do that, you're just taking whatever size of paper you have. You're cutting some notches every, doesn't matter what the distance is really. And you're going about halfway up. And then you will take and fold the notches one direction and then the other direction. You're just going to go back and forth. Foldy, foldy. Fold, fold. Okay. And then we're going to put glue on the bottoms. That's what the part we're gluing to our board. And just putting it on the bottom of those tabs. And again, that's going to allow us to create a curved structure that can be glued down on a flat surface. Like, how cool is that? All right. And maybe I'll put that up just a little bit higher so I can have my, I'll just do like that. Let's see, will that still stick? And those are tabs. Roll, loop, curl, tab. Okay. Now, that was the end of this week's. We set up our board. We talked about innovation and infrastructure. We did those 4 samples. So next week, we're going to work on fringe, curled fringe, pleated fringe, and pleats. And we might have a little design challenge once we get those 4 samples on our board. So we'll see you again next week. Have fun being young engineers, everybody. Celebrate makerspaces and the engineering design process. Bye.